What's up, guys? So I got a text message this morning from one of my clients asking me about how to stretch their hip flexors and kind of the front of their leg through their quad. And they've just been saying that they just feel really tight to the front of their leg and they don't really know what to do with it. So I jumped on Skype with them real quick and just kind of looked at their squat and what their hips were doing, and I asked them what they've been doing to stretch it. And so a lot of you have heard about the couch stretch, right? So that foot's up on top of something, right? You elevate yourself and then people can kind of push forward if they want to actually get into that hip flexor, or they can go back and kind of push that leg back to get more of their quad. So something that I learned a little while back is that if we come really far forward, you are going to feel a big stretch to the top of that hip, right? But we're not really getting enough of our hip flexor and our quad. When we get through a hip flexor quad stretch, we want to kind of feel it globally going all the way up. So we're getting a full movement of that hip flexor and quad to actually get it. So I asked my client how long he'd been doing it, and he said he's been doing that stretch every day for a couple weeks. And he says it's starting to feel better, but he still feels like it's a little stiff. So there's a little bit of an alternative that you can do that'll get more muscle as opposed to the capsule of that hip, right? So that option, right, is with that front foot elevated. So even if we just sit in kind of a half kneeling position, right? We talk a lot about that big nasal inhale, that big forceful exhale to feel our ribs come down and kind of create a tilt to our pelvis. If you just sit and you kind of feel those ribs come down and that butt tucks underneath, you should automatically feel a stretch through that quad coming up right into that hip flexor going up, right? So I asked him to kind of sit here and just hold this, and he said, yeah, I feel a stretch there. I was like, all right. I was like, just sit there and take about 10 breaths, kind of actively tightening your stomach, actively feeling your glute squeeze, and instead of kind of sitting here and just kind of going back and forth, keeping that back arched, right? Let's get our pelvis in a good position, tighten that stomach, squeeze our glute, and actually feel that muscle be in a place where it can be stretched now, right? Remember, if our back is extended, right, our hip flexors actually shortened, right? It's not really in a position where it can stretch easily, so that's why you see people get way out here trying to stretch it, right? But realistically, the best thing you can do is tuck that tail underneath of you, feel those ribs come down, right? From here, you should feel that stretch automatically, right? So now that we've gotten that, if that's not quite enough, right, we can elevate our foot. So I'm at home right now and don't have anything to put my feet on, so I grabbed a bunch of books, right? You can do this really anywhere, right? So I never thought my CSCS book would get so much use, but so same thing, that foot elevates. Now we can tighten that stomach, feel that glute squeeze, that tail tucks under us, and now I've got a pretty big stretch kind of coming through here, right? From there we can kind of dig forward a little bit, feel that stretch some more. Another thing you can do here too is kind of actively, about 20-second stretch, and then push that foot into the ground and try to get that quad and that hip flexor to activate. So kind of pull them into the ground, forward, contract, relax, about 20 seconds of stretch, 10 seconds of contract, right? And then just kind of keep digging in there a little bit to kind of work on that hip flexor muscle as opposed to that capsule in the top of the hip, right? So if you're struggling kind of like my client was with that hip flexor tightness, right, and it's not as much of a motor control issue, give that a try, right? Like I said, do 3 sets of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds of trying to contract that foot into the ground, and then relaxing and kind of pushing forward. Give that a whirl. Have a great Friday.